and everything. All right, so South Star, obviously we're all, hopefully mostly familiar with North Star, the independent bottler, but today we've got the absolutely wonderful Scott from Wonderland Drinks. And today I'm going to be leaving you in his very, very capable hands to talk through these exciting whiskies. I will pop up the tasting order as well for us, so you'll know what to crack on to first. But yeah, Scott, if you wanted to take it away and let us in on all these tasty drams.
Thanks, Emma. Evening, everybody. Nice to see some familiar faces and fantastic to see some faces of people that I don't know as well. Because we always love to, if you haven't already been introduced to North Star, but also South Star that we're doing tonight. I just also want to point out that the reason we're doing the two together is not because they're both the same company, but because there's a great segue, I guess, from North Star into what South Star is all about, and the stories behind both of the companies. South Star isn't part of North Star, even though the branding is leaning heavily into the North Star branding. That's because Ian Croucher, who owns North Star, is one of the co-owners or people who are kicking off the what will be the newest distillery in Campbeltown, Dál Riata. So not to confuse the two, because South Star is actually a bottling company of Dál Riata, and obviously Ian, who owns North Star, plays a pretty strong role, excuse me, in the branding of that independent bottling. I mean, it just sort of made sense to them to lean into his brand a bit, and it gives people a sense of familiarity straight away. And also, I guess, the understanding that, Ian's built a reputation over the last sort of handful of years that he is a great selector of casks, that he can present really tasty juice at very affordable prices to the market, and that's been his sort of mantra from the get-go, and so that's why they decided they would sort of lean into that branding a bit, just so people were, had a sense of comfort, if you like, in buying a South Star product. But then, of course, on the back of the bottles, it starts to tell the story about Dál Riata. And we'll sort of we'll talk more about that as we go on for the evening. Dál Riata, a lot of people are saying that's a very odd sounding Scottish name. It doesn't sound Scottish at all. It sounds more Spanish than Scottish or something along those lines. But in actual fact, it's the name of an old Gaelic kingdom. And Dál Riata was a Gaelic kingdom that took in sort of the southwest part of Scotland and the northeast part of Ireland, and Campbeltown, and in particular the region, the farm and the region where they're going to source their barley was known as the capital of the Dál Riata kingdom. So that's where the name Dál Riata comes from. But while we're rabbiting on a bit, it's probably always a good thing to make sure you've got a whiskey in your hand, because we should enjoy that while we're talking. So the first whiskey we're going to try tonight is I guess where we start this sort of journey with Ian, and that's the North Star Secret Speyside. I don't know if many people have tried this at all yet, This was released by North Star in the last series that we landed, series 17, which wasn't that long ago, but and as a lot of people would know, there just seems to be more and more bottlings that are called secret this and secret that. I mean, it just seems to have become almost standard now so often that we're not supposed to know where it's come from. And it just seems to be happening more and more. And I'm not sure why that is exactly, but I mean, I know there's all sorts of reasons, but this particular whiskey is a 10-year-old Speyside that Ian bottled last year, the end of last year, and it was distilled in 2010. And he took it from a refill Oloroso butt and finished it into fresh Oloroso hogsheads, which has produced 660 bottles. Now I know the distillery, and I'm happy to share that, but I wouldn't do that without first getting a few people to have a little stab at it. I found this whiskey just really quaffable. Just it's at 43.2%.
I think it's really cool as well how I know that on the North Star bottles, there's a lot of like real breakdown of the flavor notes of the casks, of the fill date, the bottling date, and everything like that. Is something South Star bottles have as well, or is
it
just
is
very true to North Star?
It is, and they've carried that through into how they present the South Star bottles. So at the moment they said this is Series 1. The whole idea behind South Star is that it's to sort of start the journey with them, if you like. I mean, you're talking about building a new distillery. It's going to take a number of years before there's spirit being produced. I mean, they've got the permission to build the distillery. They've got the license. They've got the land. They now are just waiting. I think they've had to put up the public notice. So I think that's just happened recently, which of course, if you like any sort of planning permits or that sort of thing, you've got to have a period of time where you put it up for the public to be able to, for Springbank to lodge their objections or
we don't own it, therefore.
All of that process takes a bit of time before you're going to see liquid coming off the stills. And lots of distilleries do lots of different things to either generate cash or to let people know they're here or they're doing things. There's lots of products. Rosé did independent bottlings and called it while we wait or something like that. And there's lots of different ways that distilleries will help themselves make gin, boo hiss, or sorry to all of those who love gin. I know it's an important liquid in its own right. But Ian and his partners, they're all about whiskey first and foremost. And so for them, the idea of South Star was like, okay, we need to do something, but we want to make it whiskey centric. And so the first round of bottlings has literally been, hey guys, hello, we're here. Here's a little story about what we're doing on the back. You'll check us out on the website. But we'd also like to present to you 3 bottles of whiskey from different regions in Scotland, which we think are pretty neat, tasty bottlings, at really reasonable prices with a little bit of a story behind it. So that's what they're doing with their bottlings. I'm sure they've covered Speyside, Highland and Islay, and I'm sure they would have liked to have done a Campbeltown, but try and squeeze some liquid out of Campbeltown for a couple of thousand bottles, and you've got Buckley's and none hope.
What's the phrase? Getting blood out of a stone.
Yeah,
Some of the
exactly.
distilleries. It's so hard to get your hands on.
Yeah.
Now, Trav asked, have Springbank actually objected? Because obviously had to. Has anyone put any complaints in yet, or
about
the distillery going up?
No, not that I'm aware of. I mean, Campbelltown in its heyday had what 25, or was it 35?
30. Yeah,
30 odd distilleries in its heyday. I mean, it was known as quite a whiskey capital in its day, and Campbelltown isn't just let's find the sexiest place in Scotland to build a distillery that's not actually having it's not Islay. There's how many new distilleries being built on Islay. It wasn't just like, Campbelltown, no one's doing it there, and look what's Springbank or Glengyle and everybody else have got all the fun. And another owner of the organisation of the distillery, David Sturk. I don't know if many people will know his name. It's not a name that gets bandied about too much, but David Sturk has been involved in the whiskey industry for many, many years. He's written books on Campbelltown. Campbelltown for him is it's such a fascinating place because of its history and the whiskey it's produced in time. And he also was the owner of an independent bottling company called Creative Whisky Co. For many years. I don't know if many people know that business, but he bottled some outstanding whiskey, and I wish he still did, but he sold the company for a pretty penny a couple of years ago. So David Sturk's involved with a strong connection to Campbelltown. And then another gentleman, another one of the founders is Ronnie, not Ronnie Biggs. Ronnie.
Just Ronnie. He's an icon. Just Ronnie.
Ronnie will do. And Ronnie. If anyone has been part of any of the Springbank Facebook groups or anything like that, will know that Ronnie was he started like one of the original Springbank groups on Facebook, and so he's very, very well known, and also quite a cult figure in Campbeltown whiskies. So it's not just a happenstance of let's just pick a place on the map where there's rhyme to the reason or reason. Yeah. So this first whiskey, what does everyone think? Because
one guess so far from Tom that it's a Glenlivet. I reckon it might be nearly a Ben Rennes. But have we got any other guesses in the chat of what we think this might be? It's very like floral, savory, fruity, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's definitely a Glen.
What is it now?
It's definitely a Glen.
Ross? Trav guesses?
Anyone else want to put their hand up for that one, or Glen Ross?
All right, put us out of our misery.
I would say that would be a 93% accurate assumption.
Yeah.
Of course, I can't say 100% because we're sworn to secrecy.
So which one do you reckon it is?
You said Glen Ross.
Trav said Glen Ross.
Trav said, okay, all right, yeah. You would be 93% correct if that was the case. So that's a lovely little North Star drop that he put out in Series 17. Ian put out in Series 17. Yeah, should we move on to the next space side?
Yeah, so it's the first South Star that we'll be trying.
Yeah, so the first South Star. Look, obviously, because we've got 6 whiskies here and there was only 3 in the South Star, we didn't want to, just go, oh, here's the North Stars, here's the South Stars, because that wouldn't have made any sense with what we've got on taste tonight. So we've done it in what we think is probably the proper flavour journey. And this next one, I think as we get there, again, I know the distilleries on all of these, and it's no big secret, so we're happy to talk about them. It's just that the reason they haven't done them as named distilleries was because the point wasn't to say, oh, here's a whiskey from this distillery. The point is to say, hey, we're building a distillery in Campbeltown. Campbeltown is known for a particular sort of style. Scotland has all these different regions, and whilst probably these days people are more and more starting to move towards their own distillery style as opposed to a regional style, although one could argue that Islay is still very strongly heavily slanted in one direction. But I think most people would agree that as the whiskey industry in Scotland, I wouldn't say mature because it's pretty bloody mature, but as it gets newer, if you like, more modern distilleries are building, newer distilleries are building, more competition from other parts of the world, and the need to become more of an individual style of whiskey producer rather than a regional producer, so that people can identify that, oh, this is from this distillery, not just, oh, this is a Speyside whiskey. There's more of that going on. So you could argue that there's a slow move away from this is what Speyside is, or this is what Highland is. But for the purposes of what they were trying to achieve, looking to do, it was literally saying, hey, we're in Campbeltown, but we want to celebrate all the regions, and so here's a Speyside that we think is really delicious and quite reminiscent of what Speyside is all about. It's it's lovely and light and pretty on the nose, and
yeah, I think everyone's in agreement that the nose on this is just beautiful.
Yeah,
it's so like jasmine, white flowers. It's so lovely,
isn't it? It's just sort of, it's that whole idea of wandering through a field, or an open field in springtime with
springtime flowers. In a linen dress.
Exactly. And maybe some beehives around, so the honey's sort of wafting through as well, and that lovely sort of citrusy note. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty delicious sort of nose on it.
Yeah,
it definitely makes you want to dive in and see how the palate goes. That's for sure.
It does. Jan says it tastes like banoffee pie, and that was literally the first thing that came to mind as well. That like real meringue kind of like slightly baked meringue thing. Michael is keen to skip through the tulips with the lovely light floral notes. But it's so pretty. Like
touch of saltiness, like a little, maybe
little salinity. This is one of my favorite distilleries as well, that we don't see too much of, actually. I don't know if we're going to do a guessing game for this one as well, but
it's one of those distilleries that, well, I guess it's easy enough to say straight away that none of these distilleries generally put out OBs of their whiskey. You usually only see them in IBs, and the one of them that you see sort of a reasonable amount of OB whiskies is often spoken as having better IB bottlings than OB bottlings. But I mean that Speyside, I just think That's 10 times first fill hogsheads. It's a 10-year-old. 10 first fill hogsheads vatted together and cut out at 48%. I think they got it right. I think at 48%. Of course, non-chill filtered, etc. It's got a lovely balance of nose, palate, and finish. I think it's sometimes you could be. It's interesting to do something a little lower in ABV and it can pull up too short. Or if you go for the full cask strength, it's just, well, you just want to add water to it anyway. But to generate 2,148 bottles for the world, which sounds like a lot, but it's not when you consider that, well, it's just all sold out anyway. But so that distillery, should we say what the distillery is?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, go for it. It's Mannockmore. So I don't know if many people have drunk much Mannockmore. Like so many Diageo workhorse distilleries that produce wonderful, wonderful spirit, we just generally only ever see it from IBs. And even when independent bottlers are bottling some of these things and putting the name of the distillery on it, people shy away. Oh, I don't know Mannockmore. I don't know, it's like, but hang on, this is the whole point of independent bottling. This is the whole point of, what are we trying? Are we drinking distilleries or are we drinking whiskey for flavor and experience and enjoyment? I know for me, I just, the more the better. I don't care where it comes from. I'll try it. I'm keen to understand, and especially I think we're so lucky so fortunate that the independent bottlers do take things like casks from Mannockmore and present them to us, because you would probably never see it otherwise, other than in a flora and fauna, bottling or.
Even that, working and trying hundreds of different IB whiskies over my whiskey drinking career, I've only had the pleasure of a very few Mannockmores, and like Brett and Jen, it's awesome, and it's definitely worth searching out. It's hard to find though, even in IBs, but it's so worth it. I've never had a Mannockmore that I didn't enjoy. They're all very kind of in this vibe, this like beautiful, like just fresh in the most springtime way vibe. Michael has a bit of a question which I might pop in before we get on to the next South Star. What's your target? Like, what's your branding target? What's the target with South Star? Is it just kind of like your own Adelphi before Ardnamurchan kind of thing, or is there a brand message or a demographic or an idea in mind for it?
So South Star's purpose in life is to be an independent bottling arm of Dál Riata. And I guess, yes, it is, in a sense, it's almost a reverse way of Ardnamurchan.
The reverse copy, yeah.
It's like, let's start with an independent bottling and then let's build a distillery. I mean, this is, I guess, where Ian always wanted to head, but Ian could never have done it by himself. But, in saying that, I mean, Alex from Adelphi could never have done what he's done by himself. He just needs so much money and a bit of feedback coming in there. I think, I don't know if that's me or you or is anyone else getting that? Yep.
Might turn off my heater. It is very cold here in Melbourne.
I don't know if it's your heater. I think it's just there. But anyway, I'll persevere on. It's very expensive. It's no mean feat to undertake the building of a distillery, and Ian has always, really admired Adelphi, and I guess taken a lot of cues from them and their journey. And I know he's spent a lot of time with Alex from Adelphi, and probably been mentored a bit by him. But he was always wanting to build a distillery, but the reality is that he couldn't have done it by himself. And then in the collaboration of the people that he's with now, the co-founders, I guess they have nothing to do with North Star. So the idea was, well, okay, how do we, North Star is North Star, and we'll keep doing North Star's thing, and South Star will become the independent bottling arm of Dál Riata, and the purpose will be the twofold purpose of, reminding people that the distillery is being built and it's coming, and all the rest of it, and then the other purpose being to help raise funds along the way. There's only so much money that everybody can get before. There we go. I'm just popping up a picture of I don't know if anyone's seen the sort of distillery, sorry, Dál Riata, but that's the computer image, if you like, of the distillery as the designer has pictured it. It's like going to be a really beautiful, pretty. And if you go and I'm sure on YouTube there's been some video already taken of drone video from the actual location of where the distillery will be in Campbeltown, and the views that it will take. So the views that we will take in are kind of over the harbour, over the town and over the harbour. I think it'll be quite a spectacular site, and also the design that they're going for is this quite sort of modern glass, all around, and just all about taking in where it's at. So
really cool. It looks absolutely like a conservatory, and if you guys don't have a box of Cluedo in the distillery at all times, I'll be very sad. But we might crack on to the Highland.
The Highland, okay.
So South Star Highland 10-year-old.
So this whiskey is a distillery that's become a real fave of mine. Over a number of whiskies that I've drunk from this particular distillery. Once again, it's a Diageo workhorse that probably see more and more of this around in IBs. I think everyone's like really onto the fact that, oh my God, they make just cracking juice here. This again is a 10-year-old, and again is 10 first fill hogsheads. Again, same outturn of bottles, 2,148, and bottled at 48%. And so, being first fill hogsheads, again, it's fresh. It's really lively. It's a real representation of the distillery and the liquid that it actually produces. We love sherry casks, and we love all that sort of stuff. But first fill hoggies, you're getting a real true representation of what sort of liquid they produce. If you had any left or something, but if you see sort of side by side the difference in colour from the Manickmore to the Highland is quite stark, given that they're both 10 casks, 10 first fill hoggies and everything else. So I thought that was quite interesting. I'm sure it's got lots to do with where the casks are laid down and all that sort of thing. But yeah, this one, it was interesting because this whiskey, as soon as I poured it earlier, it was just those tobacco notes just came straight out for me. And often people are saying, "Oh, is this peated?" Oh no, it's not. not at all, but again, I love the nose on it.
Yeah, for me, this one, it wins on the palate. I almost get like pineapple lumps on that first sip as well.
Yeah, right. More tropical fruits.
Tropical, but I agree with Jen. It's very savory flavor as well. It's definitely salted pineapple lumps.
More meaty, nutty, chewy. Probably longer palate on this one than the Space Side for me. But yeah, I think again, it's the idea behind it is okay, we can tell you what the distillery is. It's Blair Athol. I love what Blair Athol does. Again, as a workhorse distillery that's not supposed to. I guess look, the distillers, the makers, probably have as much pride in what they make as a small boutique distillery. I would hope anyway. Although they're probably all run by computers, to be honest, to a very specific formula. But at the same time, everything else comes into account, the types of stills and length of fermentation and their cask program and all that sort of stuff. But what a great representation of a Highland whiskey. You step up from Space Side, nice and pretty and spring-like and all that, and all of a sudden you're in the Highlands and you're meatier, you're spicier, you're chewier, it's getting cold up there. You want to stay a bit warmer. You want to have a whiskey that feels like it's going to give you a bit of a hug, rather than hold your hand and skip through the field. So I really love this when I drink it.
Yeah, I feel like all those Diageo distilleries, the more of the ones that I'm not super that you don't really get your hands on much, you're just like, why are they hiding these little gems away from us, from the rest of the world? I would say probably the Diageo workhorse distilleries are probably some of the best whiskey to get your hands on, if you can get your hands on them, is the big issue.
Yeah. And look, getting harder and harder because, as everybody knows, whiskey consumption, appreciation, flipping, investment has just grown exponentially. The last 2 years certainly didn't help any of us. The desire for whiskey, the Asian market is growing significantly. Supply is tightening, especially for independent bottlers. And then you've got, people starting to ask ridiculous sums of money for casks. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people know how independent bottlers get their hands on casks. There's a multi-layered access supply line for independent bottlings. Everybody thinks, you just go to the distillery and buy what they don't want. And go, no, it doesn't really work like that. That'd be nice if that was the case, but the fact is that you can't just walk up, and especially not to someone like Diageo. They just don't do that. You have to spend a long time proving yourself to them of your worthiness to get access to their products. And quite often that means, they might ask you to spend a couple of years buying the worst whiskey you could imagine, and have to keep buying it for 2 years before they even say, okay, now you can move up a level and you can get access to these. The idea that you would have access to, their really good stuff, it just doesn't work like that. To get some of their, to get some of the better Diageo stuff, you probably have to go through a broker. That broker probably only has a list of things that are available. They probably don't even have it themselves. It's just that they know somebody who's got some, or they know some private owners, and okay, can we taste it first? No. You can buy it, but you're not going to get to taste it. And then so there's this whole secondary, third level market almost, where so you've got the brokers doing this, and then you've got this whole other level of trade where all these people who are buying all this whiskey that's actually not that good, they're then going, oh, I need to move this on because I can't do anything with it. So then they're trying to flip that elsewhere. And then they might have a cask of something that's really superb, but they use that to trade for several casks of something else. And, it's this whole...
Essentially going back to old school bartering system with whiskey barrels.
Completely. So to get casks of Manickmore and casks of Blair Athol and whatnot, it's not just as easy as going to Diageo and saying, oh, you guys have got so much whiskey, just sell me some. So they would have had to have drawn upon their relationships to access these whiskies, because these haven't been, dare I use the word, tarted up in any way, shape or form. They're just taken as they were sold to them. They probably got an opportunity to taste them, I would suggest, and they've taken them on what they've been given and delivered them to us as these really lovely, fresh, bright examples of whiskey coming out of these distilleries. So yeah,
I'm going to be using that from now on. I'm going to be using that anytime an IB finishes a barrel in something. I'm going to say they tarted it up.
Look, sometimes it has to happen. Other times it's done to, like Ian did a Blair Athol in a mezcal finish barrel. Now the story behind that, he actually became... I don't think anyone's disputed it, but we're pretty certain that it was officially the first mezcal finished whiskey released on the market, Scotch whiskey, single malt, on the market after the SWA approved the use of mezcal casks along with other casks to do finishing. And the reason he had that was because when Diageo were dropping some whiskey off to him, they accidentally dropped off that cask, and it was a cask of mezcal, cask with whiskey in it, Blair Athol. And he was getting a Blair Athol delivery, and one of the casks, he was like, called them and said, I think this is a mistake. And they went, oh, yeah, it is. And he said, and they said, well, do you want to keep it? And he said, can I? And they said, yes. And he did that before the SWA had released their list of new approved casks, and he didn't know. It was just pure luck. And then all of a sudden they did that, and he's like, oh wow, I've got this thing, and he bottled it and released it. Now he didn't specifically finish it in mezcal cask. It was literally someone trying something out, and probably, well, Diageo, obviously they must muck around doing different things, and so sometimes finishing is done to experiment, sometimes it's done to mask problems, sometimes it's done to try and bring a whiskey up out of itself a bit more. Like the first one we had, the Secret Speyside, he's taken it out of an Oloroso butt that must have been a bit tired, and he's put it into two fresh Oloroso hoggies just to freshen it up a bit, and so that's if it makes it tasty whiskey, it's perfectly acceptable, in my opinion. Humble as that is.
Well, should we pop on to the next North Star? Speaking of North Star whiskies again, this is a surprise whiskey. Now, this one we will get you all to guess again, and let us know which one you think it is. Which distillery?
Oh, we didn't name this. Oh, right, okay.
No,
Yeah,
Well,
right.
it's not on,
Okay.
unless
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
on somebody else's taster glass.
I don't know. I didn't get them.
It's a surprise.
Yeah,
So.
I won't say it.
Yeah.
So this was a really left of field bottling, which was done exclusively for someone, and they just had to have it. And the person who's choosing it is a bit out there sometimes, and the whiskey, I think that's why he fell in love with the whiskey, because he felt that that matched his personality a little bit, being a bit out there and not easily identified and not put into a box easily, and just sort of saying all the things that he wanted to say about whiskey generally, like
Yep, I've got a few people. Nose is interesting. It's very dry. It's very pork fatty.
Yeah. It is.
Travis has got it meaty. Yeah.
That's a a really apt way of talking about pork fatty. And so this was it's 8 years old. I'll tell you sort of what it is. 8 years old. It's finished in an Oloroso hogshead, and it was bottled in May 2021. It's a whiskey that I think really needs to have air. Like it needs time open. I think it sort of reveals itself a lot more the lower the bottle, lower the whiskey in the bottle gets, the more it sort of reveals itself as the kind of whiskey it is. It's one of those ones that makes you stop and think for a bit. And I'm all for whiskies that do that, because it's all too easy sometimes to sit down with a whiskey and just not think too much about it. But I love whiskies that make me stop for a moment and go, "Hang on, what's going on here exactly? I'm not 100% sure." And you can see why the person who chose this whiskey chose it in the end, because I think that's what it did for him. Is it just made him go, "Oh yeah, this is it's an individual." Does anyone got an idea of a region?
I think everyone's bloody got it already. We couldn't keep
No
it
way.
secret. It is
No way.
Bunnahabhain, yeah.
Oh wow!
Few
Okay,
people ninja in there with.
I'm impressed.
I'm impressed too. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so it's very characteristic of when you have a distillery that is such like a solid flavor profile, that even when it's saltier than normal, or not in as much sherry, and Tom's let the cat out of the bag, that a lot of them have already done a tasting with it, so we were memory testing you. That's what we were doing.
Definitely Bunna. So yeah, well done. That's great. I love it when people are on the money. There's so many people who wouldn't pick it either. If I didn't say the distillery and I said, "Oh, it's Islay," some people would just start getting Bunna Funk, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just that like core. I always get like an undercurrent of peanut brittle with Bunnahabhain, and it's very much got that like smoked peanut brittly thing to it. Good peanut brittle from C's.
What I haven't done with any of these, and I usually make it a point to do, is to read out the tasting notes on the bottles just to see what people's thoughts were. I'll read you out the tasting notes on this one, because if anyone knows Ian's tasting notes, there's always something in there that makes you have a little chuckle. Tasting notes on the nose: honeyed cider, BMX inner tubes in a good way. So I think there's two types of people who write notes. There's people who write notes to the whiskey that they're tasting at the time, And there's people who write notes and just think about what it reminds them of from their childhood or whatever. They draw from their memories of things and they associate their tasting notes with those memories. I think Ian used to write BMXs a lot because he uses BMX tires in a lot of his tasting notes.
I remember there was one tasting note. I think it was on a Blair Atho or something like that. It was a heavily sherry cask, and it was just like one of the things like brown sugar, and then all of a sudden it says not your mama's jerk chicken.
Oh, that's better.
Sorry.
Oh. I don't know what's going on. It's just like it's yeah. Something there doesn't like technology. The palate, plum, fruity wine with crushed cashew nuts, and on the finish, sherry fueled with minted dark chocolate after eights. Anyway, that's Ian's tasting us. Yeah, sorry, Emma, I don't know what's it's like. It just started got really bad. It was drowning you out. The feedback. Yeah.
Is that a little better?
Worse. Anyway, I'll move us on to the next one, which again is another distillery which I just absolutely love the whiskey of. And in particular love this choice of bottling, the cask that Ian chose in this North Star bottling. This again came from Series 15, which is a little while ago. Was distilled in March 2007. Bottled from a refill sherry butt. 14 years old. 659 bottles, 52.5%. Yeah, that nose is just he says black cherries and treacle. Oh yeah, okay. I can get the black cherries here now. Definitely some fruits in there as well. So different from the Manic Moor and the Glenrothes. This one's got a bit more of a waxiness to it. It's got a weightiness to it that almost sort of I'd say is it's sitting on the border of Highland and Speyside. I love that. It's got that sort of bit of bready notes, some spice. Yeah, I've well, as you can tell, I've been enjoying this bottle. Yeah. I think once again, Dál Riata Distillery that doesn't have that name that that people chase, and you know what, I'm happy with that, because that means that whiskies like this are still readily accessible. They're still at a good price point, and super delicious. I mean, 52.5%. That's really drinkable at that. Actually, I saw someone the other night was posting up about it. They must have picked up a bottle somewhere, and I think they must have been enjoying it. wholeheartedly. I think they've sort of mentioned it a couple of times now that they've picked it up, and I love that because people are forever posting about, oh, look at this Bowmore I got, or look at this Springbank I got, or look at this yada yada that I got. But it's so rare that people are going, oh, look at this Dál that I got. It's and once again, it's a distillery getting bottled by IBs, thank goodness. And that we would probably only ever see, once again in the flora and fauna sort of range. I don't know if they do a regular OB bottling. Does anyone know? No.
Flora and fauna also is my headset okay?
Awesome.
Oh, thank the Lord.
You're back.
Oh God, I had to go get my husband to grab my my Bluetooth headset. But tragically those headphones look like they'll be going in the bin now.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
But yeah, so I think the Dál Flora and Fauna is the only really kind of core one. But it's another distillery that I love, especially in sherry casks.
Yeah. So that's I think it's a lovely bottling of a cask. Big outturn, 659 bottles. That was a butt that didn't see many angels, that's for sure, after 14 years. Delicious stuff.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah. Has anyone got any questions about that one at all? It's also evaporating.
The Clondeni was really cool. I tried that when I was in Adelaide. It's I feel like we're seeing a few more Dál creeping their way through into Australia, which is it's really interesting. It makes me wonder if Diageo is just not using it as much for stuff, or what's going on there. But
yeah, Josh, yes, I'm with you. Shh. Could be a secret space side. Yeah. But yeah, look, I think once again, whilst this is more about South Star and the distillery that's coming tonight, I guess it's also the segue and the fact that Ian is such a cornerstone of what is going to be happening up until the distillery is running liquid. I mean, if you talk, you're talking like 5 years away, to be honest, before we're going to see anything in a bottle. Minimum, probably longer than that, really. It's a long road. You've got 2 years, if everything goes to plan, 2 years to build a distillery and get it to start running liquid. And then, it's got to be 3 years as a minimum. Some distilleries, when they're new, if they've followed the, Dr. Jim Swan model, will probably be able to start releasing whiskey, 3.5 years after they've been laying it down. Other distilleries like Ardnamurchan, they've held out for 5 years before they started to sort of really push their product out into the market. I guess it's hard to say when people say, oh, when will they have the whiskey ready? I'm like, well, the whiskey will be ready when the whiskey's ready, if you like. No one will know. No one will know, because no matter what their production setup is going to be, or the cask program, they won't know until the whiskey's at a period in its maturation that, okay, they might have to hold back. They might be able to go earlier. We're not to know, but what an exciting journey. In saying that, we're lead us up to our
the final one,
our final bottle, our final South Star bottles. As you can see, they've wanted to differentiate the bottles from the North Star and from the South Star, and I don't know if they'll move away from the branding being like North Star. I don't know yet. I'm gonna be over there, lucky me, in about 6 weeks' time, and I'll sit down with them, and no doubt we'll talk about all that over a dram or two, and I'll come back with deeper information at the time. But I think the last line, I think everybody knows what it is anyway, but you know, another Diageo workhorse. This is an 8-year-old in refill hoggies. So all the others are first fill, and this one's refill hoggies. Again, 48%. I just love this. I mean, I think this is, just so lovely. That whole sort of, white wine, Chardonnay sort of color. People so often want to dictate taste, flavor by color. I love whiskies that have so little color on them, yet pack so much flavor into them. And I think this is a great example. This is fresh and bright, and so it's just a lovely sweet and peat sort of, it's not in your face peat. I think this is a lovely whiskey that can be enjoyed by people who maybe are just trying to get their heads around peat.
Yeah, Kalila's always been so approachable. This one just gives me like roasted artichoke hearts. It's so vegetable, but not in the way that some of the other distilleries can be. It's I feel like I'm eating like roast veggies by a fireside.
Yeah. Just so drinkable, and Kalila, what a distillery that is. I mean, it's just fabulous. I mean, for a behemoth of a distillery that just pumps out, industrial volumes of liquid. It just constantly delivers. Doorway to peat. Yeah, exactly. I think so.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, for those of us who weren't able to make the Bunnahabhain tasting, it was really interesting to see that because Kalila was closed for a little bit when they were doing their visitor center. I think the visitor center there is now up and running and all that. But they were contract distilling peated spirit from Bunnahabhain to use for the Johnny Walker blends. Yeah.
At Bunnahabhain. At Bunnahabhain?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they were making the peated spirit. So, wow. But it's crazy to see. I mean, it's obviously Kalila is probably the biggest distillery, or one of the biggest distilleries in terms of volume in the Diageo portfolio, and it's why we see so much of it in indie bottlings, and it's all so good.
Yeah, I know. They're obviously, Diageo aren't afraid to sell Kalila because it's everywhere. It's interesting that they did that with, I guess, a bit like when Highland Park shut down and they went and distilled up at Scarpa for a while. There was some chat that when there was all these Orkneys, the Orkney whiskey everywhere, but pretty much everyone knew that it was all Highland Park, but they would never name it. And it's like, why won't they name it? Why won't they name it? There was some talk at one stage. It was like, oh, well, when they shut down, there was all this whiskey being made up at Scarpa and they couldn't say it was Highland Park because it wasn't being made up, yada, yada, all that sort of thing. Who knows? All for a good story. Kalila plus ex-bourbon equals never bad. Yeah. I've got not to take away from the fact we're doing a South Star tasting, but we have done a bit of a North Star. The newest North Star shipment is coming in about 4 weeks' time, and there's a Kalila that we've done exclusively for Wonderland Drinks in there, which isn't ex-bourbon, but it's totally delicious. And anyway, look out for that. But yeah, so
is there any questions for Scott about the brands or distilleries that might be coming up from South Star, or everyone's just enjoying their drams?
Yeah, look, I think I guess South Star is, you know, it's not trying to build an independent brand that is all about just being an independent brand. You know, and especially this release now, I don't know when there's going to be another release of South Star. It may be quite some time. You know, it's not like, oh, we need to make money out of South Star. It's like South Star is there to enable Dál Riata. It's a support act. So it might be quite some time before there's another South Star. And, you know, we're happy for it to be exactly what it is, like just really good, honest, tasty whiskey at a really good, affordable price, you know, something that is accessible to everyone. And that, I think, will be, I guess, what Dál Riata will be all about as well. Is there's definitely will be a philosophy of accessibility, whiskey for the people. You know, that's always been Ian's desire, is to do whatever he can. You know, he's done some stuff that was at the time thought expensive, and then literally now you can't buy it. And if you could, it would be on an auction site for 10 times the amount. And I wish I'd held on to it, because, you know, he was bottling stuff, 40-year-old things, you know, 30-year-old single malts, 40-year-old blends and that sort of thing. And he can't even get that anymore. And those things were selling for like $200 a bottle for, you know, 40-year-old blended whiskies.
Those were the days.
Stunning. I mean, those days were literally like just a few years ago. It's so crazy how things have changed so rapidly and so significantly. But, you know, Ian and his partners, that they will continue to just, you know, keep pushing that idea of no, we need to make it accessible. Otherwise, it's going to become a drink of the wealthy again. Or I shouldn't say again, because traditionally, obviously, it wasn't. Yeah, it's what South Star is right now. It's, you know, 3 delicious whiskies, something to suit everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and on what Michael's just asked about, we actually have most, if not all, of these whiskies available on the website tonight. Just posted the link to purchase, and everyone in the tasting gets a lovely little discount if they decide to buy a bottle. I know that I will be personally putting a bottle of that Manacor aside if there is any left. But yeah, so if anyone is interested in getting their hands on one of these bottles, we do have some available for sale. I think there'll be an email going out with another update link if you can't find it in the Zoom, and a link to the recording of this video. But I think apart from that, it's been absolutely wonderful to you know, dip my toes back into North Star and to experience South Star with everyone here, and get really excited about, you know, this new sub branch indie bottling series, and hopefully we'll see some Dál Riata in the next 5 or 6 years. I'll put it in my calendar, right?
Yeah, put it in your calendar. Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, you can sign up to the Dál Riata mailing list. You'll know what's there, and obviously anything South Star that's happening that's connected to Dál Riata, I'm sure everybody here has probably got their finger on the pulse, and you'll hear about it soon enough. We're now just starting to get it out into the whiskey shows and that sort of thing as well. So yeah, it'll be out and about. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much, Scott, for joining us tonight and
Oh, thanks for having me.
taking us through these whiskies. And thank you everyone again for tuning in. We always love to see you and your wonderfully familiar faces. So
is the Manickmore and the Blair Athol mixed up on the website? It was a
I
question.
will take a check and take a squiz at that out and see. Yes, it looks like the names are mixed up. Don't worry, I will know which one.
Thanks, Trav. That's we're here to tell the truth.
Yep. If you buy a Speyside, it'll be the Manickmore Speyside. If you buy a Highland, it'll be the Blair Athol Highland. I just have to change the names in the back end. Thank you for picking that up. But yeah, thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And maybe even see some of you guys at our upcoming whiskey shows.
If anybody wants to just reach out, directly to me at any time, you're always welcome. Just scott@wonderlanddrinks.com. We can have a look on the website. Always happy to engage outside of these more sort of semi-formal things. Anyway, cheers, guys. All the best. Have a good night. Enjoy your whiskey.
Thank you.
Thanks.